the IRA, the 401k, the Roth IRA. If these are things that are confusing to you, don't beat yourself up too much because, well, these things are actually confusing. But don't worry, you're in the right place. We're gonna try to break this down and make it as simple as possible. We wanna answer all your questions and figure out which one's right for you. This is an important video because watching this video all the way to the end could help you to become a tax-free millionaire simply by properly planning for your retirement. Really. We're going to explain all of these accounts and I'm gonna give you my thoughts on each of them. I'm even gonna explain why I don't have any IRA at all. What? All of this happens right now. Hey everybody, I'm Jay, and here we talk about real estate, personal finance, and other gems that can make you money.
Subscribe.
That's right, folks, we're sharing the wealth. According to the Federal Reserve, 1 out of every 4 adults you see have no retirement savings. Think about that. That's 1/4 of everyone. No plan for their future. I don't know about you, but that scares the hell out of me. That means we're gonna have people retiring with absolutely no way to keep a roof over their head or feed themselves. So why aren't people in the USA saving up for retirement? I think it's one of those things that's just really easy to procrastinate. When you're younger, you're thinking, oh man, retirement's so far away and I don't want my money locked up where I can't get it. And as you get older, maybe you're living paycheck to paycheck and retirement planning seems confusing. You don't want to make any mistakes. And before you know it, you're at retirement age and you're scrambling and you're panicking. I think you get it. You don't want that. You probably already know how important it is to build some wealth for your future. An IRA, a 401k, a Roth IRA, all of these things are special accounts that you can use to save for your retirement. Now these type of accounts haven't been around forever. The 401k specifically wasn't created until 1978. So what did people do for retirement before then? Well, companies would provide pensions. It was very common for someone to work for a single company their entire life. And then when they retired, that company would take care of them in the form of a pension. The problem with pensions is that people started living longer. Eventually, companies were finding themselves overwhelmed with the amount of pensions they had to pay. It started to become more and more difficult for companies to fund their day-to-day operations while still maintaining their obligation to pension monies owed to retired employees. Companies and government got together and thought, well, what if people could contribute to their own retirement plan, sort of self-fund it? And ta-da, you have 401k, IRA, and other types of accounts. So with all that out of the way, let's just get right into it. The first thing to know is that all of these, the 401k, the IRA, the Roth IRA, these are types of accounts. And what I mean is, some people think of these as investments, but it's actually the money inside these accounts that gets invested. Think of a 401k or an IRA as a special kind of account, similar to a checking account or a savings account. Only these accounts are designed to help you in retirement. When you put money in these accounts, that money can be invested in stocks, bonds, all sorts of different things depending on your goals, your age, when you want to retire, how long you plan to live in retirement, etc., etc. Before we get too far though, I don't want you to get hung up on the jargon. Let's break a couple things down. There is a hierarchy to this. There's a difference between an IRA and a 401k. A 401k is something that you can't get on your own. It's sponsored by your employer. But an IRA, on the other hand, is something you go out and get on your own. In fact, the letters IRA literally mean individual retirement account. Now there are some differences between the two, but we're gonna put that on hold for now. We'll get into that in just a little bit. Because both of these accounts, an IRA and a 401k, can be broken down a little further. There is the traditional type and the Roth type. So there's a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA. And there's also a traditional 401k and a Roth 401k. There are some differences between traditional and Roth, and we're gonna talk about that. But for just right now, know the difference is all about when you wanna be taxed. Do you wanna be taxed now? Or do you wanna be taxed later?
Jay, I don't want to be taxed ever.
Well, then you better figure out what a real estate 1031 exchange is. But I digress, that's a topic for a different video. Why doesn't somebody tell me that my collar was messed up? So we've already identified 4 types of retirement accounts. See, that wasn't so bad. We're making progress. Those are the ones we're gonna talk about. I just want you to know real quick that there are other types of retirement accounts. Usually they're designed for special cases like self-employed or nonprofit, etc., etc. For this video though, we're gonna stick to the more common ones that we've already identified. So let's just start breaking them down. So let's start with a
Roth IRA.
I wanted to start with this one because it's really important. If you get nothing else out of this video, do this. Put money into a Roth IRA. A A person can become a tax-free millionaire in approximately 37 to 41 years simply by doing nothing else but putting the maximum allowable amount into a Roth IRA. That's why it's especially important for young people to do this. If I could go back and be 16 years old again, the first thing I would do is start loading up money into a Roth IRA. This is powerful stuff, folks. All right, so now I'm gonna tell you what it is. With the Roth IRA, money that goes in gets taxed now. Your money will get taxed as ordinary income before going into the Roth IRA account. And then it can grow, and whatever gains you make are tax-free. And then when you pull it out someday, whatever's in there comes out tax-free. I will have done you a huge disservice if I let you get through this Roth IRA section and really miss the magic here. The idea is that the money's gonna grow over time. Compound interest is gonna kick in, and it's gonna snowball and earn more and more money. You're not gonna get taxed on any of those gains. This would be like if you could put some money into your Robinhood account, and whatever gains you get, just pull them out, no taxes. Withdraw from my account with no taxes? I wanna do that! It's really hard to say exactly how much you will make, but it's really nice to know that no matter what it does, it's growing tax-free. Well, like with anything, there's always a catch. So here's the catch with the Roth IRA. There are contribution limits. These limits sometimes change, but in 2020, the most you can put into your Roth IRA in 1 year is $6,000. Unless you're 50 years old, then you can contribute $7,000 because they think you need to catch up. Although I don't know how much catching up you could do with just $1,000 extra. But hey, whatever. Just to be clear, contributions to your Roth IRA are not tax deductible. So you earn the money, it gets taxed as ordinary income because it's income, and then you put it into the Roth IRA. But you've already been taxed on the money, and you're not allowed to then turn around and make a tax deduction. Another thing to know about a Roth IRA is it has income limits. And what I mean is, if you make too much money, you can't do it. You're not allowed to contribute to a Roth IRA. I'll just say if you're single and you make more than $139,000 a year, or if you're married and filing jointly and you make more than $206,000 a year, you're out. You're not doing it. However, if this is your situation, you might want to check out something called a backdoor Roth IRA. We don't have time to cover that in this video, but I did want to mention it in case you want to look that up. So when can you pull your money out of a Roth IRA? The short answer is after the age of 59.5 years old. But there's a neat little feature to the Roth IRA, and that is that the money that you contribute, not the gains, just the amount you contribute, can be pulled out at any time. So if you put $10 in, if that $10 compounds and earns you $20, you can still pull $10 out anytime. But you can't pull the full 20 out until you're 59.5 years old. So this makes it like a savings account but on steroids. The good news is, with a Roth IRA, there is no minimum distribution amount. Meaning, at a certain age, they don't force you to start pulling your money out of your account. However, you do want to make sure you have your money in a Roth IRA for at least 5 years before pulling it out. Let's talk about some of the reasons why some argue that it's not a good idea to get a Roth IRA. They think the traditional IRA is better. With a Roth IRA, you get taxed now, but with a traditional IRA, you get taxed later. If you think about the trajectory of a normal life cycle, the idea is that you go to school and then you get a job, and then you're working your career and you're at your stride, and right during that peak, you're at your highest tax bracket. And then as you get older, you start to work less, you eventually retire, and you're in a much lower tax bracket because your income is lower. So the argument says that it's much better to be taxed later when you're in a lower tax bracket. But a Roth IRA, you get taxed now when you're likely to be in a higher tax bracket. I have to say though, why would you plan your life that way? I plan my life to continue to invest and make smart decisions so that when I'm older, I'm in the highest tax bracket I've ever been in. Not because I like paying taxes, but it's just inevitable if you're making the most money you've ever made. And that's where I want to be in retirement. Also, the government is awash in debt. They're handing out stimulus packages left and right. I think it's very likely that in the future, taxes will be much higher. So I have to say, in almost every scenario, I prefer the Roth IRA. Moving on to a traditional IRA. Just like the Roth IRA, there's a max contribution limit of $6,000 per year. Unless you're over 50 years old, then you can contribute another $1,000 for a total of $7,000 per year. The big difference is when you're taxed. With a traditional IRA, you could put your money in tax deferred. That's a fancy way of saying you won't be taxed now, we'll catch you later. How that works is, because this is an individual retirement account, money contributed to a traditional IRA does qualify for a tax deduction. Then your money can grow in your IRA account, and whenever you go to withdraw it, at that time you will be taxed on whatever you've earned. Remember how with the Roth IRA, if you make too much money, the government basically says, "Meh, can't do it." Well, the good news is with a traditional IRA, doesn't matter how much you make, you can still contribute to your traditional IRA. You make a few dollars, you can contribute. You make millions of dollars, you can still contribute. No problem. Wow, hold on. You didn't think they'd make it that easy for you, did you? While you can always contribute to a traditional IRA, there are income limits if you already have an existing retirement plan through your employer that prevent you from taking the tax deduction. In other words, if you already have a retirement plan through your employer and you earn too much money, you could still contribute, but you can't take that tax deduction. If you're single and you have an existing retirement plan with your employer and you make $75,000 or more, or if you're married and you or your spouse have an existing employee-sponsored retirement plan, and you make a combined income of $124,000 or more, then you can still contribute to a traditional IRA, but you cannot take the tax deduction. But remember with a Roth IRA, we said that your money grows tax-free? Well, the opposite happens with a traditional IRA. You get taxed on all that growth. Your profit in your IRA, when you go to withdraw, will be taxed as ordinary income. If you have a choice, why would you choose this? Why would you choose to have all of your gains taxed? Yeah, no, I'm good. By the way, anything I tell you to do in this video is just for entertainment. You should always speak to a professional financial advisor. I'm just a guy on YouTube. But seriously, Roth is the way to go. Okay, Jay, when can I withdraw my money from my traditional IRA? You don't want to withdraw your money until you're at least 59 and a half years old. Lest ye be punished. Do you want to be punished? I don't think so. One thing that's a little bit different with a traditional IRA versus a Roth IRA is that if you're 72 years old or older, there's a minimum withdrawal requirement, meaning they force you to start taking your money, or they punish you. You could face up to a 50% penalty for the amount you should have withdrawn. Ouch! One of the arguments in favor for a traditional IRA is the tax deferment. The reason this is argued as a benefit is because if you defer the taxes, you have more money now that you can invest. And if you have more money now that you can invest, then you have more money growing over time in your account. It's easy to see that having more overall money to invest early on, because taxes don't get in your way, is somewhat of an advantage. All right, let's switch gears to the 401k. We're talking about the traditional 401k, not the Roth 401k. Now remember, a 401k is a type of account you get from your employer. But the great news with a 401k is there are no income limits whatsoever. Well, that's not exactly true. I mean, you have to have an income. So technically that's a limit, but there's no maximum income limit. If your employer pays you $1 million annual salary, you can still contribute up to the maximum allowable amount into your 401k account. So what is the maximum allowable amount? Well, if you're under 50, it's $19,500. And if you're over 50, it's $26,000 a year. Now, you ready for my absolute favorite part of the 401k? It allows for employer contribution matches. Now, not every employer offers this, but if they do, wow, what a dream come true. I want you to wrap your head around this for a minute. If you get a match to a contribution, that's an immediate 100% return on your money. You are not going to find that anywhere else. That is just free money. They're handing it out. There you go. You definitely want to take advantage of this. What usually happens is if employers do offer contribution matches, they only offer it up to a certain amount. So whatever that number is, make sure that you are contributing up to that amount. So one question that comes up a lot is, well, if my employer is matching me, is that counting towards my contribution limit? And the cool part is, no, it's not. There are some overall limits, but those maximum limits are quite high. For example, your contribution plus the match cannot exceed your total salary. With a 401k, much like the other retirement accounts we mentioned, you don't want to withdraw your money until you're at least 59 and a half years old. Nobody likes penalties, so don't do that. Also with a 401k, if you're at the age of 72 or older, you must start withdrawing your funds. With a 401k, you can contribute funds to this account in pre-tax dollars. In most cases, you'll see it pulled out from your paycheck before the rest of your money gets taxed. This helps to keep you in a lower tax bracket. The rest of a 401k is pretty much the same as a traditional IRA. So my thoughts on a traditional 401k, well, first of all, I have to say if you're getting an employee match, that is an absolute no-brainer. instant 100% return on your money? Yes, please. But besides just the employer match, I do appreciate that with a 401k there's a higher allowed contribution amount. This allows you to build up your money more quickly. I also think a 401k is great for those who lack the discipline to contribute to an IRA. Because it's going to come out of your check automatically, you end up really not thinking about it. The money just kind of disappears and you learn to live without it. I think that's easier for a lot of people than forcing themselves to actually make a contribution on a regular basis. But even with all of these, there's something I like so much better than a traditional 401k, and that's a
Roth 401k.
Now, very few employers actually offer a Roth 401k. I won't go over all the specifics because it's essentially exactly the same as a traditional 401k, but it adds all the benefits of a Roth account. It's very Rothy. It's Rotherific. Rotharama. I just really like a Roth 401k. Specifically in my example, my employer didn't advertise that it was available. But I called the finance company that manages our account, and just as a shot in the dark, I asked them if they could switch my account to a Roth 401k. And they did it. It was awesome. So now I'm able to contribute up to $19,500 into my Roth 401k, and any gains that I make will be tax-free. In fact, did you know that someone contributing the max amount to a Roth 401k could become a tax-free millionaire in as little as 22 years? That is incredible. And that doesn't even account for matches. If there's matching, it will happen even faster. The thing to know about matching though is normally when matches are made on a Roth 401k, the matches come in as a regular traditional 401k match. So the match is tax deferred, but your contribution is tax-free. There are some haters of the Roth 401k because they insist that it puts you in a higher tax bracket. But when looking at the numbers, in almost every scenario, you end up ahead with a Roth 401k. Honestly, if this is available to you, I absolutely think every single one of you watching this video should be doing this. One question that comes up is, can I put money into a 401k and an IRA? And the short answer is, yeah. All the same limits apply, but if you really wanted to have as much money as possible going into a retirement account of this sort, maybe it's a good idea to do both. Another question that comes up is, can I have a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA and contribute to both? Yeah, you can. But in this case, it's a little bit different because the total amount contributed cannot exceed the limit for an IRA account. So for example, if the limit is $6,000 per year, you could put $3,000 into a traditional IRA and $3,000 into a Roth IRA, but then you would be maxed out because you would have reached the $6,000 limit. So which one's better and which one's right for you? Well, that's a tricky question to answer because it really depends on your unique situation. Although that's such a weak answer. So I'm not gonna do that to you. I'm gonna give you my exact opinions, and you can let me know if you agree or disagree down in the comments. I'll just start with the most obvious thing, and that's the 401k match. If your employer is willing to give you free money, then that is a no-brainer. Take the free money. And as long as we're talking about a 401k, if you're employed, you want to see if you have the option for a Roth 401k. I say, if you're 45 years old or younger, the Roth is a no-brainer. If you're 45 years or older, then what you should do is take the traditional 401k, and any of the money that you save by not paying taxes now, you need to also invest that money, either in an IRA, the stock market, real estate, I don't care. If you're not going to take that extra step and you're 45 years or older, then skip the traditional 401k and just do a Roth 401k. Unless, of course, that prevents you from getting the company match. Be sure to check on that. Now let's move on to my opinions about an IRA. If you're 40 years old or younger and you're eligible to contribute to a Roth IRA, that is what you should do. While I think a Roth IRA could be great for anyone who's eligible, I should note that the younger you are, the more important I think it is that you start contributing to a Roth IRA. This is because the real magic comes from the power of time to compound your numbers. Now, if you're older than 40, you have a little bit more to think about. It's possible that you might be better off with a traditional IRA if you're willing to take any money you save through your tax deductions and also invest that money, as long as you're contributing to your IRA and also contributing the tax savings. Again, if you're not gonna take these extra steps and you are eligible for a Roth IRA, just go ahead and stick with the Roth IRA. Now suppose you're not eligible for a Roth IRA and your only option is to contribute to a traditional IRA. I think the argument for investing in a traditional IRA at this point is starting to get real difficult, especially for high earners. Because remember, high earners can't take that tax deduction. Consider that someday when you withdraw the funds from the traditional IRA, it's going to be taxed as ordinary income. You might want to think about if you'd be better off just doing regular investments in the stock market. At least your gains would be taxed as capital gains and not ordinary income. I know for me, I never invested in a traditional IRA because I much preferred to hoard every single penny I could get so that I would be able to invest it in real estate. And my plan for retirement is to have ongoing cash flow from real estate. If all of that sounds like too much to manage, then maybe a traditional IRA is a good plan. Now, I promised you at the end of this video I would explain to you why I don't have any IRA account at all. Well, for one thing, when I was younger and I really should have been putting a lot of money into a Roth IRA, I simply didn't know it existed. But I could still invest in a Roth IRA now, right? So why don't I? Well, it turns out I'm actually not eligible. And I don't invest in a traditional IRA for the reasons I just mentioned. I think I'm better off investing in the stock market and real estate. However, if you watch this video all the way through, you know that I do have a Roth 401k with my employer. The thing that's gonna get tricky for me is one of my goals is financial freedom, which in part means quitting my 9-to-5 job. That would throw a big wedge into my continued investments into my Roth 401k. If and when that ever happens though, I should be able to roll over my Roth 401k into another investment account. Alright, that's all we've got for now. To make this video was a ton of work. It took a ton of time and a lot of research. I try my hardest to give you the best information that I possibly can. And if you appreciate that, just do me a favor and hit the like button. And if you enjoy these type of videos, please subscribe. And if you have a retirement account, I want to know which one. Let me know down in the comments below. You guys are awesome. I'll see you in the next video.